For 18, if you remember, we left off. We talked about all that Abraham did in interceding for Sodom at the end of chapter 18, but we did not get to God's response on chapter 18. So that's where we're going to start here. We have, starting in verse 28, peradventure there shall lack 5 of the 50 righteous. Wilt thou destroy all the city for lack of 5? And he said, If I find there 40 and 5, I will not destroy it. And he, this is Abraham, spake unto him yet again and said, Peradventure there shall be 40 found there. And he said, I will not do it for 40's sake. And he said unto him, Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak. Peradventure there shall be 30 found there. And he said, I will not do it if I find 30 there. And he, this is Abraham again, said, Behold, now I have taken it upon me to speak unto the Lord. Peradventure there shall be 20 found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 20's sake. And he said, Oh, let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak yet but this once. Peradventure 10 shall be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 10's sake. And the Lord went his way as soon as he had left communing with Abraham, and Abraham returned unto his place. So we have here God's response. First, the whole chapter of chapter 18, and now going to chapter 19, is summed up with the rhetorical question that Abraham asks of God, shall not the judge of all the earth do right? God will do right. That's why we have these chapters in the Bible. And part of this is God has perfect judgment and perfect mercy. It's why God will be judging the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, and it's why God, because of his mercy, will spare the whole city for a few righteous. Abraham is interceding for the city, and I pointed out at the very end of the last lesson, there are 2 times in the entire Bible I can think of where God told people not to intercede. And one was God told Samuel to stop interceding for Saul, and the other is God told Jeremiah to stop interceding for his people. In every other situation, in a lot of completely wicked environments, the Bible specifically gives examples of Noah and Daniel and Job, each of which lived in times where basically they were the only righteous person in the area and everybody around them was wicked. They interceded for the people, and that's part of God's will, is showing mercy. God's mercy is perfect. So God promises he would spare. We're talking about 5 cities here, not just, we think of Sodom and Gomorrah. We're talking of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zoar. He'd spare these 5 cities for either, depending on how you read it, either one is possible, in Sodom and Gomorrah, or in all 5 of the cities put together for 10 righteous people. And we have then God goes his way. Remember, we're talking about a physical appearance of God here. It's probably a Christophany. God is speaking to Abraham in the form of a person. And we have, yes. A theophany means just an appearance of God in the Bible in some physical form. An example would be the burning bush in time of Moses. A Christophany is specifically when it's Jesus Christ appearing before he came to this earth as the Savior. It's another time where Jesus Christ is appearing in the Bible. A lot of times when the phrase angel of the Lord is used, it's referring to an appearance that is almost certainly a Christophany, but not all the uses of angels of the Lord in the Bible are referring to appearances of God. You will see if it is, if the angel himself says what he will do instead of what God will do, or if the angel of the Lord accepts worship directly or directly does things that only God can do. Those are evidences we're talking about an appearance of God. Otherwise, the angel of the Lord is just talking about an angel of God. So, brief sidetrack, good question. That brings us to the review of Genesis 18. In Genesis 18, Abraham serves 3 guests. These 3 men, and notice it's Abraham himself that serves them. He's recognizing the greatness of these guests. 2 of them go to Sodom. They're the 2 angels we're going to talk about in this chapter. The Lord promises to Abraham and Sarah the exact time of their son's birth after the 9 months pregnancy from where we are now. And God tells Abraham about Sodom specifically, and Abraham intercedes for Sodom and the other cities. Any questions there? Okay. So now we get to Genesis chapter 19, and Genesis chapter 19 has three main purposes. One, it shows God's deliverance of Lot. Genesis chapter 19, the two angels come here and they deliver Lot and the part of his family with Lot from the city. It also shows God judging Sodom, which is what he's mentioned, and specifically in chapter 18, verse 21, God says, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which has come unto me, and if not, I will know. God is, through his angels, visiting the city. He already knows the extent of their evil, but he's getting, I'll say, a direct evidence of it. And we also see in Genesis chapter 19 how the immorality with Lot being part of Sodom for so long, how this hurt him and his family. We see the direct consequences of him being so close to this much sin for so long, and how the immorality affects his family personally. These are the three things mentioned in this chapter, and it's the last chapter in Genesis that talks about Lot. Any questions here? Okay. Do I have a volunteer to read chapter 19, verses 1 through 3? Volunteer to read. Go ahead, Steve.
There came two angels to Sodom at even. Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. And he said, Behold, my Lord's turn, I pray, into your servant's house. Tarry all night and wash your feet, and ye shall rise up early and go on your ways. And he said, Nay, we will abide in the street all night. And he pressed upon them greatly, and they turned into him, entered in his house. He made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat.
Thank you. So we have the angels, and they arrive at Sodom. They arrived where Abraham was in the heat of the day, in the middle of the day. We're probably talking sometime close to summer where there are long days, but they come to Sodom at evening, meaning the sun is low in the horizon. The two angels make it all the way basically down the side of the mountain there, a couple miles to where Sodom was. We see in verse 1 that Lot is in the gate of Sodom. And in all of ancient culture, referenced in the Bible, the people who sat in the gate of the city are the people that are most honorable in the city, like the highest people, the judges, the leaders, the elders of a city. They would sit in the gate of the city. They'd handle other matters. They'd watch how things were going. They'd watch who was entering and exiting to protect the city. All of it, very high responsibility. That very first verse that Lot is sitting in the gate of Sodom shows that he is highly honored in Sodom. That's already a problem. He's lived there. That was an unwise decision. By this point, however many years later, biblically, it's at least 14 years later because of the age of Ishmael. He's honored in Sodom. We also then see the two angels come here, and Lot is the one who takes it upon himself to offer shelter in his house. We don't have any mention of what the others who are sitting in the gate were doing, but Lot is the one who offers his hospitality and then presses upon them his hospitality, very likely because he knows what is going to happen here. So, any questions about the first three verses? The fact that Lot bakes unleavened bread for them would just show you that this is not at all a planned experience. You do not have enough time for the bread to rise, so you bake unleavened bread and it's like a pancake. Okay, and do I have a volunteer to read verses 4 through 5? Go ahead, Obi. So basically, as soon as possible, this is an extent of the wickedness of Sodom, as soon as possible, they do mention when they're asking Lot that it is this night, so probably the sun has just gone down because it's before Lot and the two angels are laying down to sleep. The men of the entire city surround Lot's house. That's what the word compassed means. They surround Lot's house, and there's no discrimination. It's not just the young men, not just the old men. They all surround the house. They want to abuse Lot's guests. And they tell Lot as such, there's no shame at all, there's no hiding this at all. There's like, this is what's going to happen, and this is what we want you to do. The Lord said he's finding out whether their wickedness is as the outcry that came up to him. And already by this point in the chapter, you have the answer is absolutely yes. The wickedness is very great, no attempt to hide it. Any questions here? Yes.
You mentioned about the cry of the city. And I think last time you mentioned it as the people that were being hurt, that was their cry. But now it seems that the cry maybe is just the reality of sin's voice coming up in a sense? Or,
Yeah.
You understand what I'm asking there a little bit?
So I do understand that.
Metaphor of the sin itself making noise?
I think if you lived in this type of city, there's permanent psychological trauma and such that happens because of the things that have happened to you during this time. And the word outcry means a cry for help. Like people were crying that way. And obviously the people who are out here are very hardened. But there would be a huge amount of people in the city that are affected by the sin of these people. The entire cities.
So in a sense, the concept, because it's not stated with clarity, it's almost as if God hears the sorrows, even of sinners who don't really cry out for him, but are just in pain.
And
Be part of the concept?
yes, that's very biblical, and that's what that word specifically means. He's judging Sodom because of the wickedness, but he says it was the cry for help that came to my ears. So, brings us to a volunteer to read verses 6 through 9. Yes, Yuri.
And Lot went out of his door unto them, and shut the door after him, and said, I pray thee, brethren, do not so wickedly. Behold, now I have two daughters which have no man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do ye to them as is good in your eyes. Only unto these spare me nothing, for therefore came they under the shadow of my roof. And they said, Stand back, and they said again, This one fellow came to serve join, and he whom needs to be a judge. Now will we do worse with thee than with them, and they have shut upon the man, even Lot, and came near to break the door.
So, we have in Lot's reaction that Lot alone goes out. When the people said, look, we want the men that are with you, Lot goes out, he shuts the door behind him. Lot will have servants in the house. There will be a lot of people here. But the idea of shutting the door behind him is probably just it barred behind them. He doesn't want anybody going inside the door, getting inside, and all the people rushing in. So Lot's outside, the door is shut, and Lot tries to reason with them. So he doesn't say, do not do wickedly, he says, do not do so wickedly. Part of this, the Bible says, he was tormented in his righteous soul by the deeds of these men in Peter. But all that to say, he's basically trying to get them to stand down. And his first thought is not, we're going to defend this house against you and take as many with you as you can, or look for an opportunity to escape. It's protect the guests by offering his daughters, which very, very evil. I cannot even imagine that type of decision. All that to say, he's drawing the line here with a very bad choice and offer. Protecting guests is very important culturally if you're in the Middle East, but so is defending your daughters. And defending your daughters is one of the highest duties of a husband, of a father, morally. And regardless, he's willing to set that aside, shows the part his lack of wisdom and wickedness is affecting him. Possibly also the fact he has to make a judgment so quickly and he's trying to think what would appease them. That's possibly what's related here. But he doesn't even get as far to having to carry out any part of this because they decide they're going to take matters into their own hands and deal with Lot, saying, this fellow came into sojourn, meaning he's a foreigner, and he will needs be a judge. The idea is he keeps judging us. That's the idea of that statement. So he is a foreigner. Whatever testimony Lot had, we do know he has a testimony of not participating with them in the full degree of wickedness that they're going to. And they say, we're going to pay him back for this. Now we're going to do worse with thee than with them. So they're going to try to break down the door and basically do whatever else they want to fulfill their evil desires. All that to say, they're trying to make an example of Lot for standing against them. Any questions here? Part of this chapter shows this is how great the mercy of God is, that he let things get to this point before he steps in. And we even see in the Bible he stepped in as an example. He uses destruction in Sodom and Gomorrah as an example of how God deals with his evil. God judges all evil in eternity perfectly, and none of it escapes. Either it's paid for and judged through Jesus Christ, or it's paid for and judged by the person himself. But God's mercy is just that he delays punishing sin. It's not that he forgets to punish sin. The example of how severe God's punishment against sin is what happens to these cities. But the same judgment is true. That's the same severity of judgment that God uses against all sin. Just in his mercy, he delays punishing it. Any questions here? So, things are very, very, very bad here, and the angels step in. We see here both the power of angels as well as they're doing exactly what God sent them here for, which is to deliver Lot and to judge the city. And so that's where we're getting to in verses 10 through 13. So, a volunteer to read verses 10 through 13. Go ahead, Luke. You skipped one verse, verse 12. So Lot is faced with these people trying to deal with him and break down the door. And at that time, the angels open the door from the other side, pull him inside, shut the door, and strike the men outside the house. Remember, they're surrounding the whole house. They strike the men with blindness. And an illustration of how great the wickedness of Sodom is, when they're struck with blindness, they don't think, oh, that was a really bad idea, let's go away. They weary themselves trying to find the door. They're so intent on committing wickedness. They keep going, trying to find the door throughout the night until they're tired. That's an illustration of what's happening here. That's how far they're willing to go. And the angels now say, before this, Lot probably didn't know they were angels. Now he does. Hast thou any here besides sons-in-law, so people that have married his daughters, and thy sons and thy daughters, and whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of this place. So we're talking about servants. We're talking about his sons and daughters. Now, we do not know if the angel said this just generally. We do not know whether Lot had actually any sons. We do know if he actually had any sons, they didn't go out with him. I looked briefly, and there's all sorts of speculation here. There is no solid part from this verse. The angel's just asking over sons, or from any I'll say even in a Jewish tradition, there's no consensus on whether Lot actually had sons. But they're saying, get your whole family out and get whatever else you have in the city out. Why? Because we will destroy this place, because the cry of them, same word, cry for help, is waxing great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. The Lord sees perfectly every person who is hurt by all of this sin and exactly how much damage all of this caused, and the Lord is going to destroy the city. Lot immediately believes them. Probably part of it is how they supernaturally defended him, but part of it also, he would know upon hearing this that the city deserves destruction. There is no way anybody would argue, oh, they're not that bad. So, we see, first, are there any questions? Okay. We go to verses 14 through 17. Verses 14 through 17. I'll volunteer to read them. So, I'll read them then. And Lot went out and spake unto his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, Up, get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy the city. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. And when the morning arose, the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife and thy 2 daughters which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. And while he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his 2 daughters, the Lord being merciful unto him. And they brought him forth and set him without the city. And it came to pass, when they had brought him forth abroad, meaning out of the city, that he said, Escape for thy life, look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain, escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. So we have here either the men are so disoriented now that Lot can get through them without any difficulty, or they've given up by this time. But Lot goes out of the house to speak to his sons-in-law, which had married his daughters. We're not talking about the 2 daughters that are still in his house. Jewish tradition apparently is that he had 4 daughters, 2 that were married already to men in the city of Sodom, and 2 that weren't. Regardless, we see his 2 sons-in-law were not part of all the men that surrounded the house. In other words, it's men from every quarter, from all over the city, and it's men from all ages, old and young, but it's not every single person in the whole city participating in this. But he goes and speaks to his sons in the middle of the night, which when somebody, Lot's probably somewhere 70 to 80, goes in the middle of the night to talk to you, it's something serious, and then he says, get out of the place or the Lord will destroy the city. Very serious. But his sons-in-law just do not believe him. They think this is some elaborate joke, which also shows either they're oblivious to the uproar that's been happening in this city over the last couple hours or however long, or that they don't care because it happens all the time. But either way, they're used to it. They see nothing wrong in the middle of the night. They do not believe him. And with his sons-in-law not believing him, his daughters that are already married, they will not be saved from this. They'll be destroyed with the city. So that's the first area in which Lot's unwise choices in partnering with sin hurt his family directly. So the implication is he tried the whole night, because you have this happens in the night, and he's telling them, and his sons-in-law think he's joking, and then it says, and when the morning came, the angels do something about him staying in the city. So the implication is he didn't just try once. He cares for his family, but he's not able to make any headway. Yes, Pastor?
I was just going to say in that verse 15, because you mentioned about the dot where he says, take your wife and your 2 daughters which are here.
Yes.
So it does imply that they're in his home still
Yes.
compared to the others.
And yes, it's clear he has 2 daughters here, and it's clear they're not the daughters that are married to his sons-in-law. It's not clear how many sons-in-law he has, although, like I said, by Jewish tradition, he had 2. So, when the morning arose, meaning the sun is just starting to rise, the angels hasten Lot. They make him hurry. They say, take your wife and your 2 daughters, basically, lest you be overthrown in this judgment too. And he still tries to linger. When the angels say, look, get up and go now with your family that's here, he still tries to stay. And so the men grab him, his wife, and his 2 daughters and take them outside the city. Basically, I'm not going to say drug them out, but they pulled them out of the city because the Lord was merciful to him. Because of this, it's going to cost Lot basically at least most of his possessions. Most of his possessions are going down here, but the Lord delivers him and his family because of his righteousness. And when we see Lot as a righteous example, he's not a very righteous example. There are serious problems here. This goes into parts when the Bible is talking about why God judged Judah's sin. God says it's so severe that even if Noah, Daniel, and Job were here, they'd only deliver themselves. They wouldn't deliver any of their families, only themselves, and I would still destroy the rest of the people. God spared Lot and his whole family with Lot's questionable righteousness as part of his faithfulness, and God delivered them all. Whereas the sin of Judah got to be such a point that God says, look, even if there were Noah, Daniel, and Job, like 3 of the most righteous men in the entire Bible, and they were there, they'd only deliver themselves. They wouldn't deliver their families with their righteousness because there is so much wickedness here, and I will destroy it. All that to say, God is very long-suffering. When he destroys sin, he absolutely destroys it. It's his pattern. It's what he must do. It's part of his righteousness. He makes an end to sin. And all that to say, so the angels just take his family out by force, and now they're outside the city. And once that, go ahead.
Just a sort of discussion thought. Verse 16, while he lingered. So it would seem from verse 15 in the morning, like you said, he seemed to plead all night with his daughters and brothers-in-law.
Sons-in-law, yeah.
And so I wonder if the lingering then was in contrast to that, a delay, or if that was just like, oh man, we got to get our stuff, or you understand what I'm asking? It's
So-
distinction. One seems that there was some compassion in Lot for his family, and then this statement, is this a derogatory statement toward them, or is it still?
It's basically that Lot didn't obey their command to leave immediately. He didn't recognize the urgency. And there's got to be reasons for this. Like Lot's obeyed them completely up to this point. The illustration here is Lot has some other what he thinks are good reasons to stay longer. And they say, look, you need to leave now, and they pull him out. So, brings us to volunteer to read verses. First, verse 17. So now they're outside of the city, and the angels have brought them out. That he said is either referring to one of the angels, or it's referring to the Christophany or Theophany that visited Abraham and then went his way. Either way, there's somebody speaking on behalf of the Lord, saying, escape for thy life, look not behind thee. The idea of look is the idea of carefully gazing and considering what's behind. So don't do that. Neither stay in all the plain, because we're talking about this very fertile plain. Escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. 3 different ways the person speaking on behalf of the Lord says, escape now or you will be consumed. Any questions here? Okay. A volunteer to read verses 18 through 23. Go ahead, Lorelei. So we have here, so the angels just give him this command in 3 different ways saying, escape. And he says, oh, not so. Apparently, the degree of his complete obedience is spent here. He was lingering first, and now he's saying, can we reason? Can we make another deal here? So he mentions their grace and mercy in delivering him, and then he says, they've commanded him to do this, and he says, I cannot escape to the mountain unless some evil take me and I die. Like, I can't do what you've said, so let's compromise. And this shows how great God's mercy is, because here he is, God's given him a direct command, and he's trying to compromise on this. And so he points out, of the 5 cities in the plain, Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zoar, he points out Zoar and says, look, this is a little one. Can I go here? Because I can make it there and my soul will live. And God shows him grace. And he said unto him, see, I have accepted thee concerning this thing also, that I will not overthrow the city for the which thou hast spoken. That verse is the strongest argument that this is a theophany. We're talking about 2 angels and the appearance of the Lord here, because the person speaking says, I've accepted your petition, it's been presented before God, and I will not overthrow this city. That's the strongest evidence that God himself is present here. And God grants him his request for the smallest of the 5 cities, Zoar, that God will not overthrow it, and then gives him this command, haste thee, so hurry and escape thither, for I cannot do anything till thou be come thither. Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar. Zoar just means little. The city is named Little from here because Lot called it a little city, and God spared it on behalf of Lot. This one that's apparently much smaller than the others. And the sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered into Zoar. We're talking about the morning earlier, that was the start of the sunrise, when the angels drag him, pull him out. And now the sun is fully risen. How long does that take? Probably 45 minutes, something like that. It's not been a long time. He did hurry to get to Zoar. And God carries out his judgment, but are there any questions before we get to that part? So, yeah.
It is interesting, they pull him out of the city. I mean, it's sort of like sanctification in the sense, you're pulled out of the fire, and then, okay, there's, obviously you depend upon God.
Yeah.
There's a sense in which, hey, you got a responsibility, now get out of here.
Yeah, they didn't pull him the whole way to the mountains. Now, part of this also is repentance, and following the Lord is a choice. And we see on the sad part of this passage, and the one part we're told to remember in the New Testament, is Lot's wife makes the wrong decision here. But that brings us to verses 24 through 29. Do I have a volunteer to read? Go ahead, Steve.
Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of the heaven. He overthrew those cities, all the plain, all inhabitants of the cities, and that which grew up on the ground. But his wife went back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. Abraham got up early in the morning to the place where he stood before the Lord. He looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah, toward all the land of the plain. Behold, though the smoke of the country went up as the smoke of a furnace. And it came to pass, when God destroyed the cities of the plain, God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow. When the overthrow, he overthrew the cities in which Lot dwelt.
So we have here verses 25 and 29 are the summaries. Remember, Hebrew, Genesis is this way, where most of the way through the story, like with the flood, you get a couple verse summaries of what exactly happened. Same with a lot of other events with God's promises. But first we have verse 24. The judgment comes by the rain of brimstone and fire. What's brimstone? It's sulfur. It's a very poisonous compound, like it just kills living things. and fire. So there's a burning rain and there's sulfur. If you go to that area now, which is the Dead Sea Plain, it's totally barren. There are sulfur salts everywhere. The smell is extremely potent. I've heard from Pastor Andy in Puyallup. I've never been to Israel. He has. I've heard it looks like a frosted donut because there's salt on everything. And like you can literally scrape it off with your finger, and it's salt that tastes absolutely disgusting because it is sulfur salt. It's not the edible type of salt. But all that to say, he makes this entire thing a salt plain and puts so much salt in it, nothing here is ever going to grow again until the millennial kingdom when the Lord heals the waters of the Dead Sea. He's making a case here, an example here, that God's judgment against sin is final. That when God overthrows sin, nothing comes back. So he wipes out 4 cities, Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, with brimstone and fire. And verse 25 makes it very clear. He overthrew those cities and all the plain and all the inhabitants of the cities and that which grew upon the ground. Destroys all the vegetation, all the cities, and such in one foul swoop, the exception being he spared Zoar on account of Lot. And then we have verse 26. His wife looked back from behind him, behind Lot, and she became a pillar of salt. The word look back means it's a considering look. It's like when God told Abraham to look and count all the stars if you were able to number them, so shall your seed be. Like, okay, take a careful consideration, go all the way through and count every single star you see, and your descendants are going to be the same way. Here, that's what she's considering Sodom. The implication is that she stopped and she's realizing what she's left, what she's given up, what's going to be done, and became a pillar of salt. Seems to be the idea that she was buried in salt, that with the Lord raining the sulfur salts from heaven, it buried her along with everything else in this overthrow. There are no ruins of these cities that are found, by the way. Presumably they're underneath all the ground and the salt and possibly part of the Dead Sea in this area. But there are no ruins of these cities. It's all underground. And we have here, Abraham got up early in the morning. This is an example of how fast it went, because it says here, Abraham got up early in the morning. Sunrise is when the angels pull him out. He gets to Zoar right after the sun is fully up, but still on the horizon. And when Abraham gets up early in the morning, everything's smoking. The destruction's already been carried out, and he's just seeing the smoke of that land ascend like smoke of a furnace. We've all seen the smoke of forest fires in the distance living here, but basically just seeing smoke everywhere. And then we have verse 29, the full summary of how God dealt with this, of God's righteousness, of how he acts in his righteousness. It came to pass when God destroyed the cities of the plain that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the cities in the which Lot dwelt. So we have here, God destroyed the cities. God remembered Abraham. He shows special consideration and favor to Abraham, not just to Lot, but this is partly on Abraham's sake as well, which is also why we're going to see at the end of this chapter why the people of Ammon and Moab are blessed. Lot followed Abraham, and because of this, Lot and his family have shared in a lot of God's kindness and goodness to Abraham, because Lot did make the decision to follow him, not to stay behind with the rest of his family. But so here, God destroys the evil, he judges the sin, and he sends Lot out, which 2 Peter uses as an example of how God judges the ungodly and delivers the righteous. Any questions here?
I have a couple on sulfur.
Yes.
Is it flammable?
Sulfur is not easily flammable, but it makes fire more intense. It can catalyze certain things. The chemical side is sulfur is an oxidizer. Like oxygen oxidizes a fire. When oxygen is oxidizing something very quickly, you have a fire. When it's doing something very slowly, you have rust. But when it's doing something very quickly, you have a fire. Sulfur is an oxidizer as well. It does not burn for that reason. You can't light sulfur on fire with oxygen, but sulfur will help other things burn because basically it takes electrons from them to break the chemical bonds.
Which is
So it's very, 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 very poisonous. Like the reason why Yellowstone National Park near the springs is completely barren is because those waters have sulfur in them.
I did have another question.
which is also why it smells so bad like rotten eggs, because sulfur has that smell when it's combined with gases in the air. So,
I love this part, I'm sorry, just in verse 29, where it said God remembered Abraham. It wasn't that he forgot him, but it's a picture of him answered prayer.
yeah, showing special consideration because of Abraham. And I will leave the last part of the chapter to later. I will briefly mention Ezekiel 16:49, which the Bible in one verse mentions the exact unrighteousness of Sodom, meaning the root causes, meaning how Sodom actually was, why it led to this point. And that's Ezekiel 16:49. God is basically in this part saying, you think you are righteous, talking to Judah, but the truth is you are more wicked than Sodom, and here is why. God's going to spend a couple chapters talking about this, but he brings up the point in 16:49. Behold, this was the iniquity of thy sister Sodom, calling Judah at this point the sister of Sodom, just in an illustration of how far their sin had went. It says, pride, fullness of bread, and abundance of idleness was in her and her daughters, neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. So he mentions four things. Pride, which is the idea of pride against God. The idea of what you say doesn't matter, I will do what I want. That pride against God, I will take control of myself. The fullness of bread, they had both gluttony as well as they had easy access to food, which leads to the next thing, abundance of idleness. It's really easy to get food, so that means you have lots of time on your hand for them to fulfill their own evil desires. And because of their pride, we're talking about desires directly against God. They have that extra time to do it. And then we have, neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. As we've seen very clearly through what happened in Sodom, there is no justice. There is no concern of that city at dealing with the sin, at keeping people safe, at protecting anybody. Sodom has this bent towards evil and has no justice. And depending on where you are in America, but in most of America, we're guilty of those first three with pride, fullness of bread, and abundance of idleness. There are very few parts in America where there is no justice. There are lots of parts in America where there is bad justice, but very few parts where there is no justice. But the pride against God, the fullness of bread, both in gluttony, and it's very easy to get enough to eat, and abundance of idleness. So we have a lot of free time and pursue entertainment against God in our free time is an area that America is guilty of. And when God goes further in this passage to talk about Judah, he says, your wickedness is so great, you've justified your sisters. That it's so bad here. The other sister he's talking about is northern Israel, who God has already taken out. He said, your wickedness has gone so much further, you're making them look righteous.
Do you know if that, in verse 50, there, Ezekiel 16?
Yes.
The haughty, is that a different word from pride?
My mind immediately tells me yes. My mind immediately tells me, because of what haughty means in English, it means no shame. That the pride is the against God, I will do what I want, and the haughty is, I don't care, this doesn't seem bad to me, this seems normal.
And then the next phrase seems to parallel with Genesis 19.
Yes, committed abomination before me. It's not that God identifies in verse 49 the foundations of Sodom's sin, and they'd gone so far with it that they're doing the things that Lot dealt with in this chapter before God delivered him. And that's when God dealt with it. So,
Now, where does it,
go ahead.
is it Jude that says that Sodom is a picture of eternal fire?
2 Peter again. It talks about the flood and God's judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah as a picture. Although those don't use eternal fire. And when you said that, I think of suffering the vengeance of eternal fire, and my mind does not complete the verses forward or backwards, so that could be in Jude. Yes, because having gone after strange flesh is also there. It is in Jude. So, brings us to any questions before we close the study? The greatest example here, one is no matter how where things are for you personally or what things are happening, you can trust God for deliverance. God is faithful. You should be trusting God no matter in what position you are. Also, being close to sin has consequences, and God is righteous. If you see sin not judged now, it will be judged. God uses this as an example of how severely he judges sin, which is also why every person needs salvation in Christ, because any person facing the judgment for his own sins, you're talking about complete destruction. With that, let's go to prayer. Dear Lord God, I thank you for this chapter. I thank you for the clear testimony of your righteousness, as well as of your mercy in delivering Lot. We thank you for your faithfulness. We thank you on just the clarity of this chapter, the wisdom that you've given, as well as the example you showed in the Bible of your mercy and faithfulness to Abraham, and now your power and righteousness in judging sin. We pray we would trust in you in every circumstance in our lives, and we pray that the rest of these services would bring honor and glory to you. In Jesus' name, amen.